Welcome to Grit, the Real Estate Growth Mindset podcast, hosted by Brian Charlesworth, founder of Sisu. Sisu provides growth automation software for real estate. You'll hear stories from real estate thought and technology leaders, team owners, and brokers on how they grew their business in a rapidly changing industry. You'll learn how to transform your brokerage and teams into a high-performing and analytics-driven business so you have a new, durable, competitive advantage against disruption in your market. So let's get right into it.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Grit Podcast. I'm Brian Charlesworth. I'm the founder of Sisu and the host of the show. And today we are here with Dan Noma. He's the owner of Venture Real Estate and Investment. So Venture REI. For those of you who don't know what REI means in this industry, it's real estate investment. So anyway, excited to have you on the show today, Dan. There are so many questions about the, COVID-19. How's that affecting the industry? And with you, certainly we want to address how that's affecting the iBuyer industry.
Sure.
Specifically. Dan is one of Arizona's top real estate brokers. And whenever I hear that, I'm always impressed, Dan, and you're also one of the top real estate agents there, as well as all the other stuff you're doing. So I'm excited to hear that. But Arizona is like just smothered with top superstar real estate people, right?
Yeah.
So how do you be the top five there? Maybe we can, why don't you you were named 40 under 40, named one of the top 5 real estate agents. Anyway, I'd love to maybe get a little bit more of your background from you and
Sure.
how you've actually excelled in Arizona with all that competition.
Sure. Yeah, it's this is definitely I don't know why, but this is the land of the real estate beast, we say. That's just it's been an interesting run. There's a lot of talent here for sure. So my core business, the brokerage, is really set up to work with institutions, private equity groups, and hedge funds, specifically to acquisition and disposition of their assets. We do a lot of acquisitions for publicly traded companies that are buying, thousands of homes that are coming in to rent. So that put us in kind of a unique position to really dive deep with the iBuyer, right? The iBuyer started in Phoenix about 7 years ago. And so we early on learned that this was a tool in our business and not really something that was working against us. And how can we leverage this in our business? And so, to be honest, our business really exploded, once the iBuyer started, once the iBuyer actually got going and the idea of this instant offer became interesting, we just kind of took what we were doing on the institutional level and shifted that thinking over to iBuyer. We were able to transact quite a bit. I think our biggest surprises out there are just the way that consumers think. So my team, specifically focuses on consumer thinking. Like I might be the only guy you interview on the show that has a mindset coach. And I study not only my mindset, but consumer thinking.
Cool.
Really dive deep into, how people are reacting to different messages so that we can maybe make sure that we're tailor fitting to whatever environment they're in today.
Okay, so that's a great point. So consumer thinking.
Yeah.
How is the consumer thinking right now? Here we are, half of the country is on lockdown.
Yep.
People don't know, depending on what state you're in, you're able to sell real estate, you're not able to sell real estate. I can see you sitting in your home office right now.
Yep.
So what is the consumer thinking right now, since you're an expert in that?
Sure. Yeah. So, what we're seeing here, it's short for us. We've really been disrupted, I would say, in the last 2 weeks in Phoenix. It's not been months like we're seeing across New York City. So I have sympathy for those guys. But for what we're seeing here at our micro market is really that, the idea of certainty was interesting to our consumers before. The idea of this, the ability to transact without having to deal with maybe all the pain points that they've had to deal with in the past, right?
Yeah.
Appraisal issues, inspection issues, buyer buys something and they're no longer financeable, things like that.
Yeah.
So we found that there was a big shift in our market from consumers wanting to eliminate those doubts and at least explore options. They wanted to see what those options were. What I'm seeing today is that consumers, I have a couple things. One is, I think that the good news is a lot of them have some equity and we're seeing some patience. This is the first time I've seen patience in our market in a long time. Phoenix is always boom and bust. So we typically don't have any kind of balanced market. It's very, very cyclical in that regard. But what we're seeing now is a consumer patience and also this interest, this uptick in interest in what is going to be certainty and what is this new landscape going to look like, and how we identify that for our consumers is really just that, we have options for you that consumers don't have to go through your house. They're not going to have to look through your things anymore. We can do all of this stuff virtually. Inspections, there's one guy, he's going to walk inside of your house and you're in and out. Like, there's people are putting different values on certainty for sure, but they're also putting value on safety. That's something different. I think everybody's going to have a different take on that as the dust begins to settle here. But for sure, it's, what is that consumer confidence, and how can we position ourselves as a real estate community to make sure that we're giving them some type of certainty in an uncertain world?
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
You talk about these showings, right? Is that the new norm, where you're not going to have people going through your house? Do you think this is causing some shifts in the industry that will be broadly adopted long term?
Yeah, I do. I think that there was enough early adopters of people that, saw this as a threat to them, their safety and their families, that moving in the future, this social distancing thing is something that they'll probably continue doing to some regard, right? And so the thought of letting, 100 humans into your property potentially during an open house is probably less likely now, right? There's less potential sellers that are going to let that activity go on. Maybe that burns off with time, but I think the new norm is going to be as virtual as we can possibly be. Limiting the amount of social exposure we have is going to be valuable for sure.
So is this going to be like a game changer for companies like Matterport that do some of these virtual tours
Yeah.
in a 3D, much more, maybe even talk virtual reality, right? I mean, is
Yep.
that the future? Is this going to force virtual reality more into the real estate space?
We certainly believe it is. I mean, we certainly believe that this is now the time where at least consumers will start to think that it's acceptable. Before, we've been testing some virtual reality systems here in Phoenix using a company called Avatur, and it's been great. But we've had a limited number of consumers that really wanted to transact that way. They said, "Well, I still want to come see the house. Like, this was fun, but will they eventually start to transact that way?" I think so. I'm sure people are going to still want to kick the tire before they actually buy the house, but at least this probably limits the amount of properties that they have to go tour, right? So the more education we as agents can give them virtually, the less amount of properties are going to have to be touring around. Like, I think what the good, I mean, if I know it's hard to kind of see a silver lining in this, but the one thing is like, this will help us level up as an industry, right? And we're not going to have to work as hard. We're not going to have to drive all these people all around all the time. It could limit our need to actually do all that stuff now.
Yeah, don't you think this creates more value for the real estate agent? I mean, it seems to me that for the last 10 years, people have been trying to devalue the agent.
Sure.
All of a sudden, I think this experience is actually showing more value in the agent. Would you agree with that?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I own a brokerage here in Phoenix. We have 160 agents. And what I'm seeing today is my agents are guiding our clients through this process, right? They're finding solutions, they're guiding them through the process. I even said it in my team meeting on Monday that I was like, man, I can't imagine being a for sale by owner today when all of this is happening and maybe you have a contract that's pending and you've never had to deal with that before, right? Like, it sounds great in concept to just sell your house to someone that you know off the street. But it's when the wheels come off the bus that everybody goes, oh, what do we do, right? And that to have that person to guide you along the way with some calm and some factual information behind them, that's invaluable, right? So I agree. I think the agent is going to level up in this for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I think all of the agents and teams and brokerages listening to this podcast are going to be happy to hear that. coming from an expert in consumer thinking, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
hopefully that's the case there.
yeah,
Let's talk about right now people who are under contract. I've seen some falling out. I've seen a lot still going through. I'm still seeing. Obviously, I have a software company in the real estate industry. I don't sell houses, but my wife runs a real estate team of 20 agents. Also now owns a brokerage with about 30 agents, just brand new brokerage. And I'm still seeing that these guys are, they're still conducting business in Utah anyway,
yeah,
where she's having her best month ever. And I don't know if that's because other people have quit working or what, but I guess my question more is around if I'm under contract on a home, how do I decide to go forward or not go forward with that?
sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think for us at this point, we've kind of separated the pools of potential buyers in two pots, right? You've got a retail buyer and you have an investor type buyer. The investor buyers, we've been coaching them to be patient, and if the need is to buy, they have to execute the money. It's a 1031 exchange or something like that. Then of course let's transact and close. But if we can be patient and understand where the market, if it's going to fall, let's let the market do its thing so that we're buying right. For the
Yep.
retail buyers, it's different, right? I think we're all experiencing in most markets right now a seller's market, right? You put your house on the market, we're getting multiple offers in most cases, properties are selling. Those retail buyers, a lot of these guys have been kicking tires and trying to buy houses for a couple months and have been beat out. And so this
Yep.
gives them a nice opportunity to buy this stuff. Like in our market last Friday, we had 900 properties that were taken off of the MLS, right? So it further reduced our inventory another 900 doors.
Wow.
And today our pending sales numbers are significantly up. So what that tells me is that the retail buyer still has confidence. The retail buyer believes that, this is a health pandemic. This is not an economic pandemic, and we need to separate those two. They still need a place to live, and they believe that interest rates are low enough that even if you see a 5, 10, whatever the fluctuation that we could see in pricing, it's still worth it to them to buy this house today.
Yep.
So what I can say is I hope that there's enough pent up demand out there that can swallow up any kind of supply that we see out there, and we could see things normalize pretty quickly if that was the case. I mean, the retail buyers are one piece of the puzzle, but the institution amount of capital that's waiting on the sidelines to see where this actually falls,
Yeah.
those guys are going to rush in, but they're not ready yet. So I think the retail buyers got a window of opportunity here to really take advantage of their ability to transact right now. And
I completely agree with that. My daughter, in fact, just closed on a home today.
yeah,
And when this all happened, she and her husband called me. They're like, should we back out on this house, or should we go after this builder to give us a discount? And basically, I just reminded them of they're at a 3% interest rate,
yeah,
right? They
yeah,
locked in at a flat 3%.
yeah.
They're not going to be able to buy a comparable house for long, right? It's going to be hard to find. I don't know. Tell me how you feel about interest rates and what's going to happen there.
Yeah, I mean, the rate thing is going to be a hard one to put my thumb on today. I mean, what I could probably speak more to would just be the amount of cash that's sitting today, right? Like I went through this in 2007, 2008, when my clients, specifically in the investment world, they didn't have cash, right? Like they were borrowing from banks and trying to make deals happen by using this. Now we're using cash. These guys are using real hard cash and equity to transact. So it's not like they're going to end up upside down in these things or things like that. Like the chances of them getting back to some normalcy is much easier. If I had a crystal ball, I would say interest rates, they've got to do something, right? The bond market's not exactly great today. There's got to be some value there, right, for these guys to start picking these things off. And once that bucket starts to overflow, where no one's buying these mortgage-backed securities anymore because the interest rates are so low, we're going to have to see them tick up. There's going to be some type of increase to that. I just, I don't know how long it's going to take. I mean, what we're hearing today is that, refi, and everybody's going after it, which is great. And I think that they should, as so long as they actually do the math and understand that, if they're in a 4.5% interest rate today and they bought the house 6 months ago and they're only moving to a 3.5% interest rate, they got to remember that they're paying a lot of interest in the front side of that loan. So it may actually not make mathematical sense to refi just due to rate. Like there's math behind that too. So
Especially since your average homeowner lives in a home about 6 years.
right. Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to make that up, most likely, if you're a typical homeowner. Now, if you're going to be there 30 years, which so many people think they are, but
Yeah.
not very often is it the case, right?
No, not very often. No.
Yeah. Okay. So you just throw around the word institutional very lightly because for you that's second nature. But I think for most people in the real estate world,
Yep.
if you're talking institutional money, they're probably overwhelmed with that. And it's like, institutional? How? So
Yeah.
give us some background on how you got in with these institutional investors.
Yeah.
And how you built that network, because I think that's something that everyone should look at doing, right? It's an extremely valuable way to be able to do a lot of real estate. So
Yeah.
maybe you could help give us some guidance along that.
If you've been enjoying Grit, please help us continue to grow the channel by leaving a 5-star review and sharing it with a friend. Now back to Grit.
Yeah, I mean the single family for rent market today on the institutional side, and I'll get into that what that means, but is really only represents 2% of the entire single family for rent market. So most properties, 98% of properties that are owned for rent today are owned by mom and pop investors. The institutions now represent 2% of that, but they've only been buying since 2011. So they expect that number to grow to 20%. They want a 20% market share in the single family for rent market. That could mean that they would own over 12 million homes across the country. So
when is that supposed to get to 20%?
Next 5 years. So
Okay.
these, that was before any kind of pivots here. But so the first group that started doing this is Invitation Homes. So one of my clients is the president today of Invitation Homes. We were transacting in small buy and sell, working here in Phoenix. He had this vision. He had this idea that he was going to take this, multifamily concepts of being able to buy single family homes, manage them almost as if you would manage a multifamily project.
Mm-hmm.
And then once he would stabilize a portfolio, he could sell it at market. So he'd sell it on Wall Street, recapitalize, and go do it again. And when he first came to me with this idea, my degree is in commercial real estate finance. I kind of said to him, I think you're kind of crazy. I don't think this is going to work. If you think about just the amount of maintenance alone, that alone almost eliminates the issue. But they've mastered this. They came out with some great programs, and he quickly, 2011, they raised about $40 million from a group called Blackstone, who's the largest owner of real estate in the world. And they, we bought 2,000 homes that year in Phoenix. So it's been an interesting run, and so Invitation Homes was really the originator of this concept, and then there's been others that have followed suit. But basically what they are is they're publicly traded entities that own single family homes for rent, that the assets within that entity are publicly traded. So now you as an investor, you can also invest in a group like an Invitation Homes where you own a piece of their entire portfolio. And this thing, is cash flowing significantly. So I think what the biggest surprise and why this is so new for everybody to conceptualize is we just didn't realize how many people wanted single family homes versus wanted apartments, right? And that's where they hit the nail on the head. So it's an industry that continues to grow. So there's all kinds of information out there if you guys want to research this stuff. But the idea of some kind of stabilization where you could live in say an Invitation Homes in Salt Lake, and you could move from that property into a home in Phoenix and still have your same landlord is kind of the concepts that we're seeing today. So these guys Invitation has 100,000 homes across the country. Progress Residential, probably 85,000 homes across the country. American Homes for Rent, probably 75,000 homes across the country. So these groups are big, and they have significant impact. And if you think about a fund, right, just conceptually, let's say they raise $9 billion to go out and buy single family homes for rent. when they could stabilize that portfolio of $9 billion of single family homes, they take that to market, and the prospectus says, hey, we think the value of putting all this together and aggregating this future value is probably $11 billion, right? So now they get their $9 billion back. They also made $2 billion, and they go out and reinvest and redo it again. So a group like Invitation, they're on their 7th fund
Wow.
doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's very cool. So how as a real estate agent or real estate team owner or broker owner, how do I get into this network?
Yeah, for sure. So this was the fundamental baseline reason that we built a real estate certification. It's called iReal Estate Pro. Being in the space like in Phoenix, I was kind of running an iBuyer game ahead of the iBuyers. And with iReal Estate Pro, what we do is, first of all, we educate our agents on how to work with the iBuyer and the institution. The second thing that we do is we give them access to, right? So we give them access to all of these groups so that they can submit their properties to them for offers, and they can get offers on their properties from these guys. So it's until now, it's very much been, a who you know business. But more recently now, we've really been able to streamline the process and make sure that these guys are, looking at properties that only work for them. And then also giving our agents the ability to give their consumers just another option. And that's really what the basis of iReal Estate Pro training is, to empower the real estate agent for the best consumer experience. And that's what we do there.
So you built iReal Estate Pro. Was that in 18 that you put that together?
We did, yeah. So we built it in 18. We actually launched here in Phoenix. We launched in August of 19, was our first ever kind of live event that we've done with that. So today, we've got over 3,000 certified agents across the country who have taken the course and are members of our community inside of the platform. And so it's been a fun ride to see, especially with the growth of the iBuyer and the institution across the country. Real estate agents always have a buyer. There's always something to do, right? And I think that's the thinking behind this, is that as long as we go fish for properties that these guys will buy, right now only 1 in 5 people are actually accepting the iBuyer or the instant offer. The rest of them are going to list their property traditionally, right? So what this is really the greatest listing acquisition tool in US history, right? So like my brokerage, we weren't set up for this. We never did any retail business. It just wasn't our core business. I started practicing this way and started giving consumer all of these available options, right? Because they would drive past an open door billboard or an offer pad sign, see a Zillow commercial or whatever it was. And if I didn't bring those options to my consumer, I started losing credibility. So I started just bringing the option to the consumer. I just
So
didn't
you would
realize.
just go online and look up those
Yeah.
prices and say, yeah, this is what you can get from here and here and here.
Yeah.
And that was part of your listing presentation, basically.
Yep. So we showed up to the door, and the more I learned this process is the more buyers that I brought to the table, the more options I brought to the table for my consumers. My consumer the credibility of me went up, right? And I started to remove.
Trust you.
Yeah, and I started to remove consumer doubt that there was other options, right? So what we always say is we just want to be involved in every conversation, whether they end up, iBuyer is a great option for them, great. If listing retail is a good option for them, that's great too, right? Or, all these other little tools that are available to agents. We just have to make sure that we're in the conversation. If we're outside of the conversation and they go there directly without us, they're out of our database forever. So we got to make sure that they stay within our ecosystem.
Okay, so you started doing that and saw that gap
Yep.
between the institutional investors, basically the large iBuyers,
Yep.
and between the realtor who's going out and listing homes.
Right.
And you said, I'm going to put this together and empower that realtor to be involved in all this. And that is essentially what Real Estate Pro does. Is that right?
You got it. Yeah. So, we've got the ability for an agent, they can submit to each one of these groups independently. We don't get involved in the transaction itself. So we just connect agent with buyer. We're not involved in the transaction. This is strictly a training course. So they aren't paying us a referral fee or anything for their transactions. But we simply show them, how to transact with these people, and then put it into an organized format that your consumer can understand when they get the information back.
Yeah, I love it. Very cool. Let's talk about property management for a minute. So do you actually own a property management company as well?
I do, yeah. So we manage about 600 doors here in Maricopa County in Phoenix.
I think that's another word that can overwhelm a lot of people in real estate.
Yeah,
Hear property management, go, oh, I mean, it's like,
yeah,
is that, I mean, everyone's heard, everyone in real estate, I think, has really heard, hey, you know what? You can own a property management company and make a lot of money, and it's actually a pretty simple business. But when you start thinking about how am I going to get into that, it seems overwhelming. Maybe you
yeah.
could give some tips on that. Again, if you look at our listeners, these are people who are mostly running very successful teams or brokerages,
Cool.
but looking to create wealth, right?
Yeah,
And a lot of the things that you've done here are really long-term wealth builders. So I love what you're doing here, Dan.
cool. Thanks. Yeah, property management for us was built out of necessity. I was referring it out to other property management companies, and my clients would come back to me and tell me that they didn't have a great experience. And I knew that if they didn't have a great experience on the property management side, they weren't going to buy that many more investments from us, right? So I needed to make sure that I was controlling both sides of the coin. And so we built property management 8 years ago within our brokerage. And we really just started with our own clients, and we just started just kind of, letting them know that we had this option available to them. Um, I would say so far so good. Is it more complicated than simple brokerage? Yeah. Is there money to be made? Certainly. I think that in our market, especially, we can focus on vacation rental management. So while that wasn't so good this most recent spring training season, in the past, historically, that's been a really good seasonal kind of rental business for us. So about 90 properties in our portfolio are just vacation rental. The rest are all long-term. It's for us, it's given us a couple different things. One is, a place for some kind of sustainable income, right? So like every single month, I can basically count on tenants paying their rent. I know I'm going to get X amount in management fees. So it's created almost a baseline of revenue for the brokerage that has been nice. Second piece is, I keep these clients in my ecosystem, so they're not going outside of the ecosystem. So to a different property management company where they might be seeing different ads and being shopped by potential sale options and things like that. And then the third piece for us is really just access to the investor and continued kind of communication with them. So we update our investors with their portfolio, and we explain to them, hey, look, now might be a good time to sell. And if you do sell, we have another buyer that's coming in who, his money's in a different place. So we're going to sell your property to him, or we're going to go buy two more for you, right? And so we're analyzing properties that way. So we're actually growing our business by using the property management company and really managing their portfolio. I mean, we like to think of it as the Charles Schwab of real estate investment, where we're actually looking at it from a portfolio perspective, trying to help these guys really decide when's the right time to make those decisions. And then along the way, I mean, there's bumps. I'm not going to paint a perfect picture for you. I mean, there's definitely bumps with tenants, and especially right now, there's some uncertainty on who's going to pay April's rent. But for the most part, property management can be a pretty peaceful business if you just use the right systems and right tools. I think it's been great.
Okay, thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that. I think
Yeah.
it's valuable. How do you communicate with your investors? Do you have a software that you do that with, or what's the main direct line of communication that
We
you
do.
use? Because with any business, whether you're listing homes
Mhm.
or working with institutional investors, communication is the key to have long-term successful relationships, right?
Yep, absolutely. So, if they're in our property management world, we subscribe to a system called PropertyWare, and within PropertyWare, we can provide them all the analytics and information that we feel like they should be receiving. If they're not yet in our property management world and we're just communicating with them, we like to use video in our brokerage. So we've shifted over to video email. We use BombBomb for video email. So we've learned that the more visual we can make it for our investor clients, and we can say to them, hey, I'm underwriting this property for you today. Here's what the rents are. Here's how I got here. We found that our close ratio went up once we shifted over to video, because they could actually see us visually underwriting the property in real time. And that way they knew we didn't just come up with a number, right? Like we didn't just decide, oh, it's worth 300,000. we actually dove in and showed them why we think it's worth 300,000. So we found that video was a huge asset for us in that regard. And then our CRM tool is simple. We use Podio, which is like a $15 a month solution. You can build it yourself. It's very kind of plug and play, user friendly. You don't have to be a programmer to figure it out. We use it in all aspects of our business to keep in touch, and that really is the heartbeat of the company.
Okay, great. I know in looking online, doing a little research on you, community service is a big thing for you, and I find for a lot of the most successful people, that's important. It's giving back. Tell us about some of the projects that you do there.
Yeah, so most recently we've been getting involved with our St. Vincent de Paul group here in Phoenix. My team has found a ton of value in just being involved on their campus, and we've gone over there and we've been doing pizza for them on Fridays, so we can actually make pizza for the group there. They've got a great pizza kitchen set up, so it's been an awesome team builder for us, and plus, give back to the community a bit. And then the Boys and Girls Club here, like we're constantly sponsoring, events and things for the Boys and Girls Club here. These kids are, definitely in need in certain areas, and so we want to make sure that we're here and we're active. So those have been great ones for us. We just got done, we called it our drop your drawers event here in Phoenix, where we, at each one of our office locations, St. Vincent de Paul had a need for underwear. And so we collected, packaged still underwear, and had everybody dropping them off at our offices. And that was a fun event that we just did this quarter.
Oh, cool. Love it. Drop your drawers.
Drop your drawers. Yep.
Cool. Okay. Well, it's been a really, I think, great experience just for our listeners, and I know for me, to just get some of these knowledge bombs for you. And just wrapping up, I just have a few questions that we ask all of our interviewees, and just first one is just, what's your favorite book? And Gary Vee doesn't read books, right? So maybe some don't either. So what's your favorite book or source of learning? What's something that everyone should do, and maybe they could take a tip from you on that?
For sure. Yeah. So I do, like I said earlier, I've got a mindset coach, and Chris Doris is my coach, and he has written a few books, but this one specifically is called The Daily Dose. And my brokerage and team and everybody has a copy of the book, and we share them often, but there's a daily, just kind of a one paragraph thing that you can read every single day. And that's how we kick off our day is by reading The Daily Dose. So for me, it's The Daily Dose. That one is my fave.
Cool. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite place?
Oh man, I actually like it here in Northern Arizona. We've got a cabin up in Northern Arizona here, and that's my happy place. It's a great place to check out, play some golf, and I love playing golf. So anywhere on the golf course is good, but that one specifically is my favorite right now.
Is that Prescott? Is that where that is?
It's in Show Low, Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And what about your favorite thing to do? It sounds like that's probably golf. Don't let me.
It is. Yeah, I love to play. So any opportunity I get, I love to play. So it's limited a little bit. I've got 3 or 4-year-old triplets at home, so my days of playing golf every day is pretty limited. But when I can get out there,
I would guess so. So you're probably excited to get them up into maybe the double digits so that you have a little more time.
I'd like to. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Do you have any other advice, Dan, that you would love to share? Just, I don't know, something we haven't touched on today that might be valuable for our listeners, especially at this time. I mean, what can I be doing as a team owner, broker owner, agent today during this time of uncertainty? Yeah,
I think that data is a currency today, right? So if I was an agent today and I had a farm area or something specifically that I was looking at, the thing that I can provide to my clients right now is I can provide them data. And right now, like, you could turn on 2 news stations and hear 2 totally different stories on the same subject. So data's king. And if we can make sure that we're providing our consumers with real data of what's happening in their neighborhood, like, here's the amount of properties that were listed in the last week. Here's the amount of properties that went pending. Here's the price point per square foot that they sold at in those various different price points. And here's our current days on market. Like, that's information that is, directly related to their little micro markets that they can't just get from turning on the news. And all of our agents have access to that stuff. And so what I've been preaching, for the last few days here specifically is that data is the currency. That data is the real currency that we can play with today. And so let's be sharing as much of that as we have access to. And that's going to help us get through this much faster.
Great advice. Love it. So how can people get a hold of you? And I mean, it sounds like I actually have an interest in learning more about Real Estate Pro. I'm like, that's
Cool.
very cool.
Yeah.
I want to learn about that. So
Yeah.
that's just realestatepro.com. Is that how we go there?
Yeah, you guys can go to irealestatepro.com,
Okay.
or you can find us on social media. iRealEstatePro is available there as well. But yeah, irealestatepro.com. You can hop on there, check us out. We've got videos about what the course covers and all the things and tips and tricks that are in there, constantly updating it. And then we've got an awesome community inside of a closed Facebook group where agents are sharing best practices across the country. We've found that to be probably one of the more valuable pieces of the puzzle for sure.
Great. And is there, as far as best way to get a hold of you directly if I have questions, Dan?
Yeah, you can just send an email probably to Dan at irealestatepro.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody's got there for sure.
Awesome. Okay, Dan, well, it's been great. Thank you for your time today. It's super valuable to be able to collect information from people like you,
Awesome.
especially during this time of uncertainty. So thank you so much for joining us today on the show.
Thank you for joining us on our podcast. If you have an interest in a free 7-day trial of Sisu, go to sisu.co, sisu.co. Make sure that you use the coupon code GRIT, that's GRIT, to waive all your setup fees and receive a 10% discount on your subscription. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and want to subscribe, search GRIT, the Real Estate Growth Mindset, on iTunes, Spotify, or Podbean. And with that, we'll catch you next time. Take care.